All right, so recently I tried to go to a dealership and try to buy a car. And instantly, when I got there, I found out that this car that I was trying to buy for $13,000 just instantly, just like that, went up $5,000. An absolute nightmare. They tried to lie to me, do all these things. So, what I wanted to do, so since I wanted to help you out, I wanted to go through the story of really what happened, but I wanted to bring in an expert to talk me through this and see what I did wrong, what I did right. How can I avoid this? And then in turn, how you're going to be able to avoid this. So let's bring him in. This is Tommy from Delivered.
Hey,
He
how's it going, Brendan?
negotiates. Awesome, awesome. He negotiates for a living, and he does this every single day. So, Tommy, let me give you the story real quick.
Okay.
So saw this car that I wanted to buy. Is one I can't find at auction for whatever reason, so I had to go the route of going to a dealership to try to find this car. I saw it listed online for $13,000. I called this dealership and said, "Hey, I know you're going to have some other fees or whatever, but just tell me what they are so I know what I'm getting into before I get there." And they wouldn't tell me, and even got to the point I asked 4 or 5 times, "Dude, bro, just please, just give me numbers, give me numbers." And I got to the point where he said, "Look, I cannot give you numbers over the phone. I will lose my job if I give you those numbers." He even said that, okay, we've never lost a customer over our fees. So I got so aggravated. I was like, you know what? This is going to be a good experience anyway. I'm either going to buy a car or I'm going to have some content. So I went to the dealership, and instantly, just like that, that car went from $13,000 to $18,000. And it was a Tesla. They didn't even have it charged. It had 1% battery when I got there. So anyway, that's what I dealt with. Obviously, I left. So, okay, let's walk through this scenario right here. How would you approach that? How would you have gotten them to give you numbers over the phone? Because obviously they weren't doing it for me.
Yeah. It's always tough. I always say any dealership that is willing to make my life that difficult over the phone is always going to be that difficult to work with in store. So many people say your presence is power, right? That's what dealerships love to use. I'm guessing you probably heard that line when trying to negotiate over the phone. But the fact of the matter is if a dealership isn't willing to give you numbers over the phone, there is always a catch. This isn't a secret magic code that you've unlocked the greatest deal ever just because you're willing to step in the door. That doesn't exist. So the first thing is if a dealership is this adamant about not giving you numbers, you shouldn't work with them. They are trying to do what we call a bait and switch. It's very popular nowadays. You advertise really low prices and then you hit them with crazy fees. The worst part about this is that this month, this all should have gone away. The CARS Act was supposed to be a thing, but the FTC has pushed it back due to Congress pushing it back. So long story short, we were supposed to be able to have to advertise these fees. They don't exist anymore. So I would have said not to do business with this dealership at all. I would have skipped them. I would have passed them. I would have just moved on and understand that if a deal ever seems too good to be true, it probably is. Because let's be real, Brandon, $13,000 for a Tesla. Like, what do you like? Is that really the going rate on a Tesla?
I can dream, right? But let's talk about this FTC thing a little bit, because I don't feel like it's gotten really enough attention in our niche. I have zero faith in the FTC. Do you have any faith for them to be able to do anything that is going to stick? And then if they do get something that sticks, don't you think dealers are just going to find a workaround for that?
100%. So, we got to remember, like, all the crazy fees and add-ons have not always been a thing. They actually started in 2020 with COVID, with, the pricing was going up. Consumers didn't like added markup. They were not a fan of it. They would just skip dealerships altogether. So dealerships realized, oh, if we just change added markup to something with benefit, then people will come in. We don't have to advertise that. It's way easier. And that's been happening since 2020. So if this CARS Act goes through, which eventually it probably will go through, you're right. Dealerships are going to find a way around it. They were profitable before 2020. They're going to be profitable after 2020. So there's always going to be a way around this. But it's going to it's one step forward in the right direction. Because pre-2020, the negotiations were dealerships didn't want to come off MSRP and you'd have to negotiate a deal. Now it's cars advertised here, but then there's add-ons. But if you look over here, they're raising rate. But if you don't trade, then they take more off the price. It's just like such a weird game, and they're just trying to do so many moving parts. the best way to describe it is like a 3-card Monty, right? You're trying to keep track of the ball, you're trying to keep track of the discount, but the dealership keeps moving it. If we have the Cars Act, it at least makes it, instead of a 3-card Monty, it makes it a straight up poker game, which I
Okay.
feel better playing that.
So walk me through like your process. How do you approach these dealerships? And one thing that's unique about what you do, and we see other car buying services doing this, and I feel like even at my dealership, I feel like a customer is not serious unless they come in the door. Now, obviously, our price, we don't have any fees or anything like that, so we can tell a customer what the price is, but we're not going to try to do any negotiating over the phone. But for new car dealers, they have a lot more wiggle room. They don't have static pricing like what we have at our dealership. But I've always thought it was very interesting for a service like yours or these other services to be able to get real numbers over the phone. And that seems like a very good skill to have, to be able to actually pull real numbers over the phone without you walking in the door. So just take us through the process and how you're able to get them to give you numbers over the phone.
Yeah. So the first thing, it all depends if you're going new and used, because it's two completely different markets. But if we put used, as I know that's where, a lot of people are looking right now. Used cars, I always say my philosophy changed. We're not always trying to go for the cheapest car. We're going for the best quality car at the best quality price. So, I'm always putting that in the back of my mind. I'm not always going for the cheapest one. I'm not trying to find the Tesla that's 13 grand. I'm trying to find the best quality Tesla at the best quality price. So what I'll do is I'll start generating a list of all the cars in my area within however far I'm willing to travel. If that's 100 miles, if that's 200 miles, or if that's 50 miles. And then I'll start calling those dealerships, ask for the out the door number. What I think is extremely important is you should know with confidence you want this vehicle. Like, Brandon, you should know that you've driven a Model 3, you like the Model 3, these are the options you want. And the only thing holding you back is making sure the car is in as good of condition as the dealership's telling you. And when I start talking about these dealerships, before I even negotiate numbers, I normally ask for a video of the car, because I want to show them I'm serious, because most people aren't going to negotiate on a used car without seeing it first. So I'll ask for a video of the car. I'll ask for extra pictures of the car. I might ask for something that isn't online. Can you show me if there's any wear on the passenger side fender or anything like, just something to get some interest, to show that I'm interested in the car. And then once I do that, I say I've driven the car. I already know that I've driven a Tesla. I know exactly what I want. And as long as the car is in as great condition as you're describing it, I'd love to buy it if we can agree to numbers over the phone. And once you do that approach, once you put those extra steps in, the dealership's going to take you seriously, because everybody knows you're buying a used car. You need to drive it first. So you need to go through all the proper steps to show that you're interested and you're doing your due diligence, because nobody's going to buy a car without ever seeing it, without ever looking at it, without going in detail, especially if there's not pictures online. So that's used cars. I don't know if you're interested in hearing new cars. It's similar, but
yeah, let's hear that too.
Yeah. So with new cars, I always say, obviously you need to drive the car first, but there's no reason to get that video, no reason to get the pictures, because if I drive a RAV4 in New Jersey, it's going to drive the same in Colorado. They don't manufacture them differently. So with that, anytime a dealership says, hey, we need you to come in and drive the car, I'll just tell them, hey, I already drove a RAV4. My favorite line I've been using nowadays, because it's pretty bulletproof, is I was on vacation to X. I went to a dealership and I drove a RAV4. I'm now back and I would love to buy one. Because there's no rebuttal for the dealership. The dealership can't say like, oh, you need to come in because ours is different. Or why didn't you buy one from that dealership? Because you didn't buy it because you were on vacation. So I love using that line. It works really well. Dealerships haven't found a stump around it. They're like, oh, okay. And then I'll tell them, I like to make my life easy. I'm looking for the best out the door pricing. I say on my videos all the time, 10% pre-rebate is a great deal. So I'll say, hey, trying to get the best possible deal. I'm trying to get 10%. If you can't do 10%, I'd love to hear your best offer. If you can get to 10%, I'll buy today. And most dealerships won't give you 10% right off the bat. They'll give you their best offer. And then you pitch that dealership against each other until eventually you get to that 10% mark, which almost always will happen.
So one thing that I never really hear you talk about very much when you're doing these negotiations, and I listen to a lot of them, you never really try to fight the dock fee. I know that a lot of these dealerships, they're going to charge it no matter what, but do you shop around dock fees for your customers? Because I know there can be a variance of $1,000 between dock fee. You have a dock fee in Florida that's $12.99, and you can have one somewhere else that's $2.99. So $1,000 is a lot of money to come off for your customer. And if you're negotiating just the price of the car, and let me circle back. Just so, are you trying to negotiate the price of the car, or you're trying to negotiate the last money that the customer's actually paying?
Good question. So, funny enough, I just did a video on TikTok on this about doc fees. So, negotiating doc fees is one of the biggest mistakes that consumers make, which doesn't make sense to a lot of people because some doc fees are $1,200, some are 1,000 or $1,000, some are $50. When it comes down to doc fees, dealerships, 95% of all dealerships have a policy not to negotiate on those. And it's not that they're money grabbing profit, even though we can argue they are. The reason why they don't negotiate on there is discrimination laws. If I start negotiating doc fees and somebody can make an argument that I'm only negotiating, let's just say with people that have good credit and everybody who has bad credit isn't negotiating, and somebody can then generate a lawsuit that these are all the people I negotiated with, that's a discrimination lawsuit all day. So 95% of dealerships are going to be very hesitant to ever negotiate on a doc fee. It just doesn't make sense. There's very little benefit, and for them open themselves up for a lawsuit, it just doesn't work. So what I always do, if a dealership, it's not a dealership problem, it's a region problem. So if you're in the Southeast, you're in Florida, Atlanta, Charlotte, um, anything along those lines, you're going to be paying a $700 or above doc fee. So when I'm negotiating in those areas, that discount gets closer to 10%. If I'm in California, most dealerships charge an $85 doc fee. Some are outliers. So I'm normally going for a 7 or 8% discount there because I understand the doc fee is less and that is inherent less profit. A doc fee should only be between 50 to $80 because there is a cost to that. But it all depends on what the regional doc fee cost is. And there's no like chart to break that down. Just know if you're in the Southeast, you're going to be paying an absurd amount of doc fee. If you're in the Midwest, your doc fees are lower. And if you're in the Northeast, then your doc fees are middle range. So I would say in those low ranges, I negotiate 7 to 8%. In Florida, I'm negotiating 10. I just did a RAV4 hybrid the other day. I negotiated 13% off that car. They had a $1,200 doc fee. So I knew that I had to go for a bigger discount because that doc fee was so high.
Yeah. So I know you probably have a Rolodex of dealers that you like to work with that you've used before that you know that they'll move off prices or whatever. Does that doc fee factor into that Rolodex of the dealers? Just because one might have that $200 doc fee versus another one that's got that $1,200 doc fee, you just know that you're going to be able to get, at the end of the day, probably a better deal for your customer at the one that's got the doc fee that's $1,000 less.
Yeah, so we have what we call our first to call list. So we're not like a brokerage by any means. So we only get paid for the consumer. We never get
Right.
paid on the dealership, but we have done business. Like I've done business with one dealership probably 50 times in Texas. They make my life easy. They charge a low doc fee. They call it a day, and it works. It's a win-win for everybody around. But we do such bulk business with them. They like us. The doc fee comes into consideration. For us, we actually have a star rating system, and anybody who wants to have us call their dealership, we rate them 1 to 5 stars and we take notes. So that is something we absolutely consider. We consider the doc fee they're charging, how simple they made my life, but also how simple they made our consumer's life. If we use somebody that's on that list, they negotiate a great deal, but finance was an absolute pain and spent 2 hours negotiating warranties, they're going to get graded less and we're less likely to do business with them. But our business philosophy is make car buying fun again, which means the dealerships can't just be super resentful. I always say profit is not a dirty word. Dealerships want to make a profit. Consumers want to save money. It's a game of chess. Both sides know how to play. And if your mindset is screw the dealership, they don't deserve a penny, dealerships will not exist, which means negotiations won't exist. But it's also going to be a worse experience for consumers. If you're at 10%, it's going to be a solid deal for the dealership, not a great deal for the dealership. But you want a dealership that wants to do business with you because the second they don't, it makes your life miserable.
Do you feel like, I mean, this whole like I have a whole channel just predicated on, okay, I'm trying to give you a behind the scenes look of how to deal with car dealers, how to save you the most money. And it's exploded. Why am I even able to exist? Why does this warfare between dealer and consumer have to exist? Do you think there's any way to fix this where we get more transparent dealers out there, or do you think it's just always going to be like this and thus keeping you in a job and thus keeping me getting views?
Yeah, this is a very profitable business. It really is, and there's a reason why dealerships like to make our life difficult. It's because it's profitable. I started the business a year and a half ago with the number one goal of reinventing the way we buy a car, and I'm super serious about that goal. And I understand there's 2 paths that my business has. Either dealerships are forced into working with me because customers don't trust them. They have to give great pricing. It calls it a day, and everybody starts to going to services like Delivered, Car Edge, anything along those lines in order to buy their car. Or option B is dealerships can't afford to deal with me anymore, or other companies, and they end up just being more transparent. They start giving better pricing, and it's a much simpler buying experience. I'm okay with either one. But I think something drastic has to change in the industry. And that's why I started the business. I can't say that maybe I'm not going to be the solution for it, but I think we're making a step in the right direction. I think it's really exciting to see, we put a video out on this first to call list, and we basically said, hey, all the clients that we're going to negotiate with, we're not going to get paid a fee at all. You're not probably not going to sell any finance stuff to, and it's going to be a triple net deal. So 10% off. And we had 400 people sign up for that list in one day trying to do business, which means we are seeing dealerships want to move in that direction. But it's going to be a slow turn. And I'm hoping that there's a lot of good channels, your channel out there, Car Edge does good things. We're here. I really think there's some channels that are trying to move in the right direction to force transparency, but I think we have a long road ahead of us.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go back. I want to be able to, the viewer that's watching this, that has never negotiated a car deal. Let's just give them the step-by-step, because I don't want them to have to pay you any money. I don't want them to have to pay Car Edge any money. I want them to be able to get all the free stuff from me. So we're going to give them some free information here. Just kidding. I did go use Tommy's service if you want to save time. What do you say? Time, anxiety,
energy, and anxiety. So never hire anybody. I don't care if it's me, Car Edge, whatever the company. Don't hire anybody to save money, because there is so much free information out there. And I'm going to give you some of that free information right now. But you hire us to save money, just like you hire somebody to mow your lawn. You can mow your own lawn, but realistically, we can make more money working rather than we could mowing it, or you just don't want to do it. So negotiating a car deal is all about pitting competition against each other. So I define buying a car into two different phases: the shopping phase and the buying phase. So the shopping phase is, the best way I describe this is when my girlfriend wants to go to Target. She wants to look at everything in the world, put everything in the cart. But if she was to actually go to checkout with all that, she would have just a heart attack. We don't want to buy anything in that phase. We want to imagine our life with it. So we're going to go on test drives. We're not going to go to numbers. So we're not going to go to checkout during that phase. We really want to experience the car and find the right car, because I think the shopping phase is something people rush, and it leads to buyer's remorse. So find the right car first. Once you've done that shopping phase, you go into the buying phase. You're not stepping foot in the dealership. You're doing everything at home. So what I normally do is if I'm buying a new car for the business, we'll contact anywhere between 5 to 10 dealerships that have the car. If that's in a 50-mile radius or if that's in a 500-mile radius, it doesn't matter. If the car is more rare, you open up your radius. If it's less rare, you're going to keep it local. And you're going to ask these simple questions. You're going to say, in an online internet lead, you're going to go onto their website, and it's going to say, contact for more information. You're going to say, I'm looking to buy a car today or tomorrow. I need the best out the door price. And I'm shopping multiple different dealerships. And the reason why we do this is we're saying we're buying today or tomorrow. That means you're serious. The biggest complaint that people have for the dealership side is that anybody that contacts them online isn't serious. They're just kicking tires. But if you're saying you're buying a car today or tomorrow, that puts urgency on it. Saying you want the out the door price means that you can't just give them a price of the car. You need everything, because you're trying to compare and can shop. And then you're shopping other dealerships know that they have to be competitive with their offer. If you do that, 80% of the dealerships are not going to give you your numbers. They're just going to tell you exactly what Brandon did, which is, hey, you need to come in store. Your presence is power. But 20% of them will. And when that happens, I always say it's the first domino to fall. Once you get numbers in writing, that is the secret code. That is the magic sauce. You then take those numbers and you go back to every dealership that said they wouldn't negotiate with you over the phone, saying, these are the numbers I have. Guess what? Can you beat them, or get me to 10% and I'll buy today? They'll beat them. And then you just keep doing that process over and over until you get to a number you're happy with. I tell consumers 7 to 10% with no add-ons. So no nitrogen, no paint protection. Doc fee should be reasonable. The only fee you should pay is doc fee plus tax title license. If you do that, that's all it is. You'll negotiate a great deal every time.
I feel like you missed the two biggest tips that you could have gave them.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And I'm gonna teach you a little bit about it. So when you're sitting down at the sales desk and you're looking at the salesman across from you, when you put down your offer, when you write it down, you have to write it down. And after you write it down, you have to look that salesperson in the eye, and then you have to circle it. That's the biggest part that you miss. And then if they don't think you're serious, you have to circle it twice. But the second thing that I think you're missing is you just have to make sure you're showing the willingness to leave. And I think you were talking about shopping at other dealerships or whatever. But recently, when we went to go negotiate for a new vehicle, like we had our hand on the door before the salesman was pulling us back in and actually gave us what we were asking for. But I think the salesperson has to know that you're going to leave the dealership unless you get your number.
Yeah, and what I'll reiterate, and part of the reason why I missed those two is that I don't recommend ever negotiating in store. I understand you did.
Interesting. Okay.
And the reason why I would recommend negotiating over the phone and online, like I do on my streams, is buying in a car is an emotional decision. And Brandon, maybe I understand you don't have emotions, and I get that, but most of us do. And when we buy a car, like if I'm buying a RAV4, there's a lot of people that have dreamed of buying that RAV4. They've imagined their life in it. And when you're at the sales desk and you have that person, again, I say the negotiation is a game of chess, and the other person that's playing is a grandmaster. They're very good at playing your emotions. And that's where mistakes happen. That's where buyer's remorse happens, when they tell you, well, you know what, this RAV4 hybrid is the last one in the lot. And you look and you only see one on the lot. And then you're like, maybe I shouldn't leave. Maybe somebody is interested that's going to be here in an hour. And you start getting that second thought. When you're at home, everything's analytical. You have 25 dealerships you can see. So when somebody says there's only one on the lot, cool, I have 24 others I can call. It's an analytical decision versus an emotional decision. So I don't ever recommend negotiating in store. It's not effective. I mean, it can work if you're really good or don't have emotions, but you still get a better deal with using competition versus anything else.
So what if you, I mean, I guess you have to coach someone to do this. So a first time buyer, they're going to want that car. So that's what you're talking about. So for the average person, this is probably not going to work. But what if that consumer goes in with the mindset, say, look, literally, I don't think I'm going to be buying this car from this dealership. I'm saying I want this ridiculous amount off. And if they don't give it to me, they don't hit my exact number, then I'm just going to leave. But you're saying that for the average buyer, it's hard for them to come up with that plan before they walk into the dealership.
And even plans are really great if they're executed well. But the problem is, and what I think what you're not doing is, you have to understand that salespeople and sales managers and finance managers, which will all be involved in that negotiation, train. I think the number, I haven't used the stat in a while, it's 24 to 2,800 hours they work on a monthly basis with somebody like you, Brandon, that has a plan in place that, hey, I'm going to go in. Their job is to make you mess up your plan and have you buy that day. They do this every day, 60 hours a week, while you're buying a car once every 10 years. These guys are trained professionals. Yes, occasionally you get a really bad salesperson, but these guys are really good at what they do. Their job is to overcome that. You have a plan, you have a price, and they're meant to try to mess with your emotions to get you to buy. And that's the problem that I have, is that I think people don't give salespeople credit. And there's a reason why so many people have buyer's remorse, why so many people said, well, I think I got a good deal. And then they look at it and they say, oh, shoot, I didn't get a good deal, because they have emotions go into it. So yeah, if you have a plan and you're willing to stay there and you're willing to sit down and not do anything, then it can work. But the problem is, most of us are going to have emotions kick in and you're going to take a lesser deal.
Okay, Tommy, I want to thank you for coming. Where can we find you and how do we hire you?
Yeah, so I do live streams Tuesday through Thursday, 3 to 7 p.m. Eastern. So we'll be on today at 3. So if you want to check out live streams, learn how to negotiate yourself, that's on Delivered, DELIVRD. I know Brandon will be there. Above and beyond that, if you want to hire me, you can go to my website. That is on my YouTube channel, easiest way to find it. Hire me to save time, energy, and anxiety. I also do free consults if you want to learn more. 30 minutes for free, get my time, and you can ask me any questions in the world.
And at 3 o'clock on Tommy's channel, I'm going to be there. So if you like more of this, you want to see more of this right here, then just meander over to Tommy's channel and we'll be over there. So let's I don't even know where I was going. Thank you for watching this video, and do all the things, subscribe, all the things. Thank you.